Good morning, everyone. My name is Dos Kalsa from NetSuite, and I am delighted to welcome you to Easy Data and Credit Management with Dun Bradstreet. We will have a Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Please ask your questions by pressing the question mark icon in the toolbar located on the top right hand of your screen. And if you have any WebEx questions, please feel free to chat me, Dos Kalsa. I will manage any technical issues you have with WebEx. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to Steve Vitello and Jay Daly with Dun Bradstreet.
Well, welcome everyone. This is actually Steve Vitello from Dun Bradstreet, and it's my pleasure to host you today for our webinar called Easy Data and Credit Management with Dun Bradstreet in NetSuite. We're really excited to share the good news that Dun Bradstreet data and analytics about your customers, prospects, and suppliers is now available in your NetSuite workflow to help you better manage your business relationships and grow your business. So we have lots to share, so we want to go ahead and get started. So there are two of us on the line today. There's actually one of us right now. Jay.
I'm on, Steve.
Okay, there you go.
Sorry about that, buddy.
Hey, no problem.
All right, so we'll start off with just some brief introductions for everybody, just so you know who you're listening to. For those of you who attended this year's Suite World, you may recognize Steve and I from our wonderful photos there. I've actually been with Dun Bradstreet over 30 years, starting out on the credit side of the business and actually writing the credit reports that many of you guys may be using today. Beyond that, I've consulted with companies on improving their risk mitigation strategies, as well as data management. And most recently, I've been working with our partners like NetSuite to build these strategies directly into applications, which then makes it easier for all of you to take advantage of. Steve?
Yep. So Jay and I actually have similar backgrounds in relation to D&B. I started about 22 years ago collecting the information and creating reports. I then moved to the sales side of the business before transitioning now into our partner and alliances channel. So my role is to help ensure that you can consume our data in the systems where you need it most and where you use it most.
Great. Thanks, Steve. You can probably tell from our bios that while the title here says we're data experts, it's actually more like data geeks. We will try and do our best not to get too into the weeds today, but can't make any promises. So let's move on to the for today's discussion. Okay, so we're going to start off with just a few housekeeping items. From there, we're going to cover talking about data trends and the volume and speed at which it's being generated and how that affects all businesses today. Then we'll cover a section on the right data about companies you'll do business with and why it's important. From there, we'll show you how to leverage Dun Bradstreet within the solution. We are now talking about two specific products, D&B Data Management for NetSuite and DNBi Risk Management for NetSuite. And as Stas mentioned, for questions, you can actually enter them by hitting on the question mark, and then we'll actually cover those questions at the end of the session. Ready, Steve?
Yeah, let's go ahead, Jay.
All righty, so housekeeping items. First off, this webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sending you a link to it within the next week if you'd like to see a playback or just have a desire to listen to Steve and I one more time. Already covered the piece on questions, and then one of the things we wanted to clarify up front is that you'll hear us use the term CFO or Chief Financial Officer. Don't take this too literally. We use the term broadly to define anyone who works with financials and or makes decisions that impact financial performance. So controllers, credit managers, collection professionals, all of these fit into this area. Now we'll move into the next section, which is data trends that impact businesses. So the underlying premise for today's webinar is that data is highly available and can be critical to a business's success. Most companies would agree with that. The question is, how do you make sense of all that and use it to your advantage? Incorrect data can be as dangerous as accurate data is beneficial. But the process for curating, validating, collecting that data can be very costly and time-consuming.
Yeah, Yeah, that's right, Jay. The digitization of business has created just an onslaught of data for companies that they have to manage. Not just the volume, but the speed at which it comes into your organization and just the varying and the multitude of types of data that we're dealing with. So this truly becomes a big data problem when the best people and the best technologies can no longer keep pace with the changing nature of the data that's available out there. So when you think of things like globalization, digitization, social, and mobile, those are only a few of the trends that are increasingly forcing businesses to adapt these data management models.
So the question becomes, for you on the phone, are you guys challenged with this issue in your business? Almost all of the research available today says that if it isn't impacting you today, you're the exception, not the rule. And with the trend being that the volume of data is actually doubling every couple of years, if it's not impacting you today, it most certainly will be in the future. Just looking at a few of these interesting stats and the impact that they have on business today, maybe there's a couple of them up there that you can actually relate to.
Yeah, and Jay, when I look at these, a lot of them are striking and eye-opening, right? So with all that data, much of which is unstructured, it's not surprising that according to Forbes, as we see here, 2/3 of companies don't have well-defined data criteria that they're using. And having worked with customers over the years in this role to help them implement data and credit management processes, I've heard time and time again how overwhelmed people can feel about getting a handle on the data they need to make decisions. So this one stat at the far right here from IBM is very telling. 82% of finance leaders who were surveyed find value in integrating data into their company systems, but only 24% of them have confidence that their internal teams and their internal structure can undertake the implementation project and have it be successful.
Okay, so what does this really mean to you? Generally speaking, your success is based on having and developing good relationships with your business partners. With all of us as a consumer, right, what impact does it have on you when a customer service rep has no clue of who you are or gives you, the end result being someone will have to call you back?
Yeah.
Or when you're continually hit by a marketing department in a company to buy a product or service that you already own. At some point, you end up frustrated and you're more than likely going to try someone else for that product or service. Business customers are absolutely no different than you and I are as a consumer. They expect you to know when they call who they are, what they've purchased, and treat them accordingly. The better you do at this, the stronger the relationships you will end up building with your customers, and the less likely they are to go somewhere else.
Yeah, and Jay, this is not just centered around sales and marketing, right? What's the impact of having an existing customer of yours asked to fill out a credit application again, repeated times? The financial side plays a significant role in managing and growing those customer relationships as well. And just as important on the finance side is understanding who you don't want to have a relationship with. The pace of business is such that companies are extending terms with little or no knowledge of the customer. This can expose companies to dangerous financial risks.
Absolutely. So we understand the problem, but the question is, how do we solve it? How do you best use data to see that full picture of a customer, a prospect, or a vendor?
This is something I think I'm pretty passionate about, and I agree you are as well, especially when we've worked here for over 2 and 3 decades, right? So D&B has aligned our company to this reality, that relationships drive growth, and that in the modern digital age, it's the data that helps drive those relationships. So despite being a data geek, I don't believe it's all about the data. What problem has big data itself ever solved on its own? Rather, it's about how you can use the data to inform the relationships that you need to build. Data is useless unless you have the ability to act on it and act fast.
Perfect summation. Wholeheartedly agree. Let's actually start discussing what we mean by the right relationship data. Companies that want to put relationships first need to establish a foundation for managing those relationships. And that foundation has to be the right data. Data that you've collected yourself, as well as data from trusted third parties. And when you combine it, you need to be able to create that singular, integrated master view about each relationship. For those of you who aren't familiar with D&B, let's take a minute and understand how D&B is relevant to the discussion. First off, Steve, I don't know if you realized it, but today is actually our company's birthday.
Happy birthday.
175 years ago today, D&B opened its doors in New York as a credit reporting agency. Credit reporters like Abe Lincoln and Steve Vitello used to write credit reports about the character of local businesses, and those reports were available for review in the New York City office. Steve, I think you came a little bit after Abe Lincoln, but
not much.
Not entirely sure. So things from a D&B perspective progressed at a steady pace until the late 60s, when the pace of business combined with technology advances required that we take our reference books and put them aside and actually begin collecting information in a database. Like the challenges you on this webinar face today, it was critical that we make sure the right information got onto the right credit report. And in doing so, we ended up creating a system that was actually the first master data management system long before master data management was even a term.
Yeah, so let's fast forward a little bit and talk a little bit about D&B today. D&B has the largest commercial database in the world, made up of over 250 million companies covering over 200 countries. We collect data from over 30,000 different business sources, and those sources drive over 5 million updates a day to the database. So it's incredibly comprehensive and an incredibly dynamic source. So for example, we collect payment data from more than 12,000 different trade partners globally who contribute 1.5 billion trade updates every year. That gives you an understanding of payment patterns to help you know what to expect from both potential customers or if you were to enter into a relationship with a potential vendor. Another great example includes the over 400 different data sources we use to track diversity, and we collect over 5 million socioeconomic classifications like women-owned businesses, minority-owned and veteran-owned, and much more like that to better source and manage the diversity of your vendors. So just in a nutshell, we've developed what we would consider a closed-loop process to manage this crazy world of big data that we live in. And essentially, it's what we do every day. It's our bread and butter, and it involves collecting, cleansing, matching, and enriching data, which in turn delivers unmatched scope, flexibility, and reliability for the companies that use it.
Okay, so again, we will try and take it up a layer from the weeds. But yeah, you take a look at this slide in terms of what is business relationship data and why it matters. We talked about on the previous slide about the 30,000 sources of data we use to maintain those 250 million business records that are available to our customers. And like Steve said, this is what we do every day. After 175 years, we've become pretty good at making sense of global, digital, social, multilingual, structured, unstructured data. We know how to connect all of these data sources and deliver it in a way that makes sense to you. It is actually not as easy as it may sound. And to kind of highlight that, let's go through just a couple simple examples.
Okay.
So to start with, we've got one company name. Here's a company that you're probably familiar with, the New York Times, and regardless of the 10 different ways it's written, you know pretty well that it's the New York Times, and you could probably clean this up fairly easily in your system if you're not doing business with, if you're doing business with them. Now go to the next example, and here's another well-known name, 7-Eleven. Some of you guys may have even grabbed a coffee from them this morning. Again, we see 10 different ways it's written. While both have 10 different ways where their name could be displayed and possibly received as source data within your company system, let's take a deeper look at 7-Eleven. The reality is there are way more than 10 different representations of 7-Eleven. Simply put, the right business is not, identifying the right business is not always easy. And if you can't get that first step right, it's extremely difficult to get that single unified view of a business with all the right data you need about them. Steve, why don't you go into some of the reasons why this can be so difficult in terms of identifying a business?
Yeah, sure. So at a high level, there's a few reasons why. As we've discussed so far, the exponential growth of data makes it difficult to determine what's valuable and what's noise. It's estimated that 80 to 90% of business information is unstructured. And as you can see from the 7-Eleven example, this is what can result. Now, just think about when you do a Google search. How many times do you get 10 results or 100? Never. You get like 10,539,000 results. That is a perfect example of unstructured data. No one has the time to comb through that many results, even though the answer that you might be looking for is on page 5,000,009, right? So,
Absolutely.
Translation challenges are also a factor in this. And that's when we get back to the globalization of business relationships. That can result in multilingual data, including languages like kanji that are character-based, right? How do you deal with that? And business entity information is constantly changing. Think back to those 5 million updates we're doing a day, including things like business ownership and key contacts, financial standing, location, and more. So in this specific example, not only do you have all the possible challenges I just mentioned, but you have the added complexity of 7-Eleven, including franchise organizations, those that are company-owned, and those that are franchise-owned. When you have business relationships with franchise organizations, it's important to know which locations you should group together based on legal ownership when evaluating opportunity and risk, and which are independently owned. And because those may have a completely different risk profile than the company-owned ones. And let's not forget that 7-Eleven can easily appear in Excel as July 11th or November 7th. So there's a bit of a difference there, depending on the geographic market. So Jay, let's talk a little bit about how we get our arms around all this data so we can provide a structured view that delivers value to our customers.
Happy to do that. Here's an overview of D&B's answer to how to get the right relationship data. It's actually how we maintain our database, and it's also a method you can use when dealing with all the sources that are flying at you. First, we start by identifying the questions that you want to answer and the data you'd need to have available to answer those questions. Then you'd need to identify where to go to get that data. Internal systems like NetSuite have a wealth of information. Transactional sales data, purchasing data, customer satisfaction, vendor performance. There's just a ton of information available inside NetSuite. This is also where third-party data plays an important role. Firmographic information like customer size, customer industry, These types of elements can add great segmentation keys for understanding your customers better. Risk data can be invaluable in understanding the health of the accounts receivable portfolio, as well as the sales pipeline. And let's not forget risk on the vendor side. Disruptions in the supply chain can not only cost you revenue, but increase cost of goods sold. And what about a question like, who is my largest customer, right? It sounds like a simple question to answer, but when you look at the complex hierarchical structure of companies today, it's not always easy to answer that question. And this is the type of place where third-party data can help considerably. So once you've identified all your data needs, the next step in the process is to begin collecting it. Again, there's a ton of information at your disposal internally, but the follow-on to that, the collection process, is actually organization. As the 11 example showed, it's not always easy, an easy process to organize your content. But you can see, but you can use actually D&B's identity resolution process, which uses the same process that we use to make sure the correct data gets into the correct business record, to append a DUNS number to each customer and vendor within NetSuite. The DUNS number is actually D&B's unique business identifier, which we have available or put on each of our 250 million records in the database. This allows you to identify duplicates in your system and organize your records into a single master view. The enrichment part is actually now very easy from a Dun Bradstreet perspective. The DUNS number is actually the key into the D&B database, and once your master record has that, that unique identifier on it, you can now dip into Dun Bradstreet's database and pull out the critical business information that you need for to answer your questions. And the last piece, which is the discover, is actually the fun part, right? That's just answering the questions. So once you've got all the steps complete, now you should be able to go back in and identify who are your largest customers or vendors. Are the customers, what customers do I have that are actually vendors as well? What do my best customers look like? Where is the risk in my supply chain? Like I said, this is where the fun really starts.
So let's take a look at some of this in action. This isn't really a piece of software that we can demonstrate right now, but I wanted to walk you through kind of a picture of how that DUNS right process that Jay was just talking about can work. So Jay mentioned D&B's identity resolution process on that last slide. And it's part of our secret sauce for getting all the relevant data from those 30,000 sources into that 250 million DUNS numbered database of records. Identity resolution is also how we identify the unique businesses for a particular record you may have. D&B has a patented entity matching process that helps you establish these master records, or sometimes we call them the gold record, and enrich them right within NetSuite by assigning that DUNS number as the key. So the DUNS number is a unique 9-digit number assigned to every business location in the Dun & Bradstreet database that has a unique, separate, and distinct operation. It stays with a business throughout its entire life and all the changes that a business encounters. DUNS numbers are used by industries and organizations around the world as the global standard for business identification and tracking. So if you want to do business with the U.S. government, you need to have a DUNS number. So we have this match reference file that holds over 650 million current and historical data points, so we can match on different data values for the same business. So things like current addresses as well as former addresses, we can match against either of those. We've got these sophisticated algorithms that we may be getting too much into the data geek weeds to get into, but just to look at this example, and this is what we see all the time as we work with our customers. Here on the left-hand side are 3 records that you might have in either the same system or in different systems within your business, where we have different points of data. But what we know based on having the DUNS number is that these three records are actually the same business entity. And what we can do is identify that for you in your system and then allow you the choice of what to do next. Do we merge these into one record? Do we keep them as three separate records but keep that DUNS number there as an identifier? That is the power of the DUNS number, is our ability to quickly look at these three records in an automated fashion. This is done via machine, right? And identify that they are indeed the same business with multiple different data points.
Great info, Steve. We thought it was kind of important to set the stage for what we're about to show you next. We believe the real value is created when your data is organized and combined with D&B data, and that's exactly why we partnered with NetSuite. So D&B and NetSuite understand your need for easy access to the right business insights. So it only made sense to partner in developing a product that offers you direct access to D&B's content within NetSuite to streamline your data management and credit decisioning needs. While we announced the partnership during Evan Goldberg's keynotes at SuiteWorld in 2015, the Suite app actually just went live this April, so we're bringing kind of brand new solution to market today. We actually have two different offerings that we're going to be talking about that are now available in the Suite app. The first is D&B Data Management for NetSuite, and the second is DNBi Risk Management for NetSuite. We'll cover the data management solution first and then move on to the risk management solution. So data management can play a strategic role in driving your company's growth. By integrating all your company's most vital relationship data into a singular master view, you can now gain critical insight into those relationships so you can better understand the risk and opportunity. Every team across the company impacts relationships in their own way. Finance teams are constantly working to optimize the risk and opportunity within the customer base. Procurement teams are working to establish and manage relationships with vendors to ensure that you have a resilient supply chain. Sales and marketing teams are working to build new and stronger relationships with prospects and customers and convert them to advocates. And IT teams are working to provide that insight that can deliver that single unifying vision of a customer or vendor relationship across the entire enterprise. Once you have this single view, you can leverage it to deliver the insight you need to build stronger relationships. Within NetSuite, you can now match your existing records to the Dun Bradstreet database and enrich those records with specific D&B content like standardized name, address, telephone, company URL, as well as firmographic information like number of employees, sales volumes, year started, line of business. Additionally, D&B's corporate family linkage, which is our legal hierarchy, is the largest network of linked business records in the world. So this can also be brought in to give you visibility into parent-child relationships within your customer or vendor base. The diversity indicators are also available. Diversity data such as small business, women-owned, minority-owned, all of this can help you in your vendor diversity programs. And the solution was built with monitoring capabilities that provide you with updates when any of the data changes. Take a look at how quickly data can change, and this is just based on the activity in the D&B database. A data management solution that doesn't address keeping the data current isn't really much of a data management solution. So Steve, you want to actually kind of go into the solution itself?
Sure. So let's take a look at how data management works within NetSuite. So one of the first things that we addressed here is there's no more need to fill in fields manually. We have found that the majority of dirty data problems or data errors happen when we have manual entry of data into the system. So using D&B Data Management, you can now create records using standardized fresh data from D&B by using the create via D&B match function here. So you can use this to create new customers, new leads, new prospects, and vendors. So if I go ahead and click on that create via D&B match button, I only need to now fill in 3 fields instead of all the other fields, right? I have company name, country, and state. And what happens here is as I type those in and I hit the search button, the NetSuite application goes out and queries that D&B database of 250 million records for all the possible matches based on what I typed in. The D&B database returned a list of possible candidates that you see down here for matching. And as I look at this list of possible matches, I find the one I'm looking for and choose select. So I select the one I want, and then I hit the create button, which is kind of blocked out because of this little box we have. But there's a create button down here. Then the D&B database returns, it could be up to 100 different data elements on the record that I chose, and populate those elements into the proper fields within NetSuite. So I get things like Jay had mentioned before, like the name, address, phone number, their URL, their line of business, number of employees, NAICS, SIC codes, along with other important data points. All of those data points are housed in this D&B reference record you see here, which is appended to the back of every NetSuite record that we've created using this process. And those changes that Jay had mentioned, those changes are automatically being fed into this reference record essentially every night. So every 24 hours. These records could change based on the data elements and changes that we're tracking within our database. What data management also allows for is the elimination of duplicates at the point of entry, which is really big here. We've just been looking at the record for international business machines in New York, right? Now, let's say a different user logs into NetSuite and attempts to create a lead or a customer record for IBM. The system will alert them that the record already exists within NetSuite and will not allow them to create the duplicate record. Instead, it directs them to the existing record on the same company. So you see that up here. By clicking on this link, it'll send them to the already created IBM record, which prevents duplicate records being created at the point of entry. So we've shown how users can create new records using D&B, but what about existing records that might be in the system? There's a way to address those as well. Here we have an existing lead in the system with a very limited amount of data. If you can see here, all I have is a contact name. I met this guy named Bob Jones at a networking event. I know he works at a company called Rochester 100 Inc., and I know it's located in Rochester, New York, but I don't know anything else. By clicking on this Match via D&B button up here, I can now enrich this record with the D&B data directly in NetSuite. And once I've done that, I then have the choice as the user to what information I want to keep and what information I want to change using our stare and compare functionality within the software. So for example, you can see here I didn't have the phone number. Well, I can add in the D&B phone number to the NetSuite record and the street address to the NetSuite record just by simply selecting those over here. So to recap, D&B Data Management for NetSuite helps you establish and maintain unique, clean, and enriched master data records about your important business relationships. so you can make those best decisions. So on average, we've helped customers reduce duplicates in their systems by up to 10 to 20%. And integrating data into a tool like NetSuite can improve your team's productivity by 15% in a year and up to 30% in years 2 and 3. These improvements can result in significant cost savings for your organization, and full picture insights and notification of business changes means you're better equipped to better manage your business relationships and grow your businesses profitably. So Jay, let's talk a little bit about the risk management offering.
Sure. So CFOs want to develop profitable relationships with customers, which means extending the right amount of credit quickly. If it's done right, it will drive revenue growth while maintaining good cash flow for the business. Today's credit department is playing an expanded role in supporting sales and driving business growth. The value of the credit department extends beyond its ability to help the company avoid bad customers. Finance can collaborate with the sales team to help them identify and expand relationships with good customers. And whether you're a CFO or in a role like a credit manager, the key for your customers, your mission is more than likely greater emphasis on growth than ever before. And it's always a balancing act between risk and opportunity. So DNBi for risk management for NetSuite is a risk management solution designed to help meet the challenges facing today's credit managers. The solution lets you combine your credit policies and rules with the Dun Bradstreet data and predictive scores, all within a NetSuite workflow. This allows you to greatly increase your efficiency by minimizing the review on the lowest risk customers and quite possibly on the highest risk customers, and allows you to focus your credit resources on the accounts that need the review. Some of the results that other D&B customers have seen with this type of solution are things like decrease in DSO by up to 5 days, up to 75% reduction in resource requirements with the automated approvals, and identifying 70% of the dollars at risk within 20% of your receivables portfolio, which can drive collections efficiency. Steve, do you want to take us through a quick demo on the risk solution?
Sure. Now, it's you're going to see a lot of similarities with the data management solution because they definitely worked in tandem. They're not required to be purchased together. They work the best, though, when you do use them together. So from a risk management perspective, I can learn a lot about my customers and prospects and use this insight to determine where it makes sense to invest in relationships and where it doesn't. So, for example, let's look at this IBM example again. We can see here that, again, all I did was type in IBM, the country, and the state, and it delivered back all those data elements that we saw before. What it also did was run through a credit process that was set up by my credit department where they scored IBM based on data elements that D&B has and returned, based on that score, a credit limit and a credit approval in real time. So what I see here is that, now let's say I was the sales rep or the customer service rep, and all I did was type in those 3 fields. I can come here and click on this D&B Risk Management tab here in NetSuite and see that our credit department is saying IBM is already approved for over $237,000 in credit. So again, now I'm able to prioritize the accounts I'm going to go after. I don't want to spend hours of time working on a prospect that is a poor financial risk for our business and that our credit department won't end up writing. That's a waste of time for me as a sales rep. So I'm able to avoid that by having the D&B risk management information directly within NetSuite. So let's say, you know what, I'm an all-star, right? And the deal I sell to IBM is going to be way more than 237 grand, right? What do I do? So there is a functionality within here that I can actually request additional credit directly within the application. So all I have to do is press the D&B credit request button, type in the amount of credit I'm asking for, and hit submit. It sends this information you see here to the actual credit department. Whoever's it's set up as a credit role within NetSuite, whether it's the credit manager or controller, however the roles are written within your instance of NetSuite. And now I can come in and log in and see, oh, it's just Vitello guy again, right? So we approved it. We auto-approved it for 234 grand, but Steve's asking for 400. Well, I'm going to need to do a little bit more research before, I can make a decision like that. So now I can just click on this view button over here. And what that does is launches me into an area within my NetSuite instance that houses a much deeper level of information on IBM and allows me to make decisions based on the information I see here. I can then action on that decision, so I can either approve or decline right from here, and that sends that answer directly back into NetSuite. So kind of a quick and dirty view of the functionality, but when in summary and thinking about that, the DNBi risk management for NetSuite helps you make better, faster decisions on new and existing applications, and it does that by applying that D&B information to your credit policies. And at the same time, you become a trusted partner to your sales organizations to bring in more new customers and grow that share of wallet with both new and existing customers. So to recap, you can create customizable decision scorecards for consistent decisions based on your rules, your customer's performance, and the information that D&B has from the rest of the world. You can access these scorecards from within your NetSuite workflow, and you can make instantaneous credit decisions and provide them in an e-commerce environment or to the sales teams to help you streamline the process.
Great, thanks, Steve. So that's what's in market today. I wanted to take just a second to speak to what's coming. We're not done yet. The first one is vendor management, and we're going to look at expanding our risk solutions to incorporate risk on vendor management. Additionally, the ability to use the Dun Bradstreet database to go find new low-risk suppliers when you have sourcing needs. And on the sales and marketing side, we're coming out with a solution called Prospector. Now that you got the content in NetSuite, where you can do the analytics and understand that your best customers are in this particular industry, in this particular size segmentation, and they're purchasing this particular product. Now you can go into the D&B database with that information and find other companies that look just like those customers. So Prospector is actually probably a good name for it. It's kind of mining for gold in the D&B database. So to wrap up, what we wanted to do is, again, there's a Suite app listing that's available where you can find a lot more information about these two solutions. And all of these are available with your through your NetSuite representative. So feel free to reach out either to your NetSuite rep or look at the information on the Suite app. So with that said, I think we'll actually get into the question and answer segment. We did have a couple of questions that came up in the system already. So the first one was actually back in the initial data discussions. We had a question on speaking to both domestic and international data and the differences between the two. I think from the timing of the question, it was back when we were discussing sources of information and being able to bring all this type of information together. So we had highlighted on the D&B side, the source data was predominantly focused on U.S. However, we have source data streams into all business geographies. The 250 million records are global in scope, and all of those are available in the D&B Data Management solution as well as the risk management solution. So both domestic and international content is part of the solution. So hope that answers that particular question. And then we had a second one. It said, we are a new NetSuite customer in the UK and about to go live next month. Is this functionality through D&B available in the UK? Steve, do you want to touch on that one?
Yeah, sure. So for right now, the data management portion of what we showed will be available in the UK, I believe at the end of this month. I think we're working on that now. The credit management for the short term is US and Canadian available only. So the data management should be available, I'd say, end of this month, beginning of next month. The credit management is not, unfortunately.
Thank you, Steve. We had one more come in. The question is, does your sales team have to use NetSuite to make this product efficient? From my perspective, I'm going to take that as a risk management solution. Well, I'll take it from both, data management and risk management. It does not have to be used by your sales team. Again, the data management component is for anybody in the account creation process, right? So regardless of who's actually doing the creation, that process will work with enrichment as well as deduplication or duplication protection. So that is not required to be a sales rep. Credit, additionally, is not necessarily required to be a sales rep persona that's actually initiating the credit check. If that in the workflow is done by somebody else, that can be a part of the process. And again, as Steve pointed out, it's actually can work within an e-commerce environment, right? So the input could be from the e-commerce end of the business rather than a sales rep actually requesting credit. So hopefully that answers that particular question. And we have one more that says, what is the cost of both solutions? Steve, you want to take a whack at that one?
Yeah, sure, Jay. Pricing is based on the number of records that you currently have within your NetSuite instance. So for data management, what we're looking at from a pricing perspective is the number of existing records you have, and then the approximate number of new ones you add within a year's time, okay? The pricing can range, I'll just give you some rough ranges, like maybe from $1 a record to $3 a record based on volume and the level of data you're getting back. So there's a couple of levers there that can impact the price. So we work on a volume discount basis. The more records you have, the cheaper it is per record. The pricing on the credit management side is very similar to that. It's based on the number of transactions you estimate that you're going to do within a year. And again, volume discount based, the more transactions you're doing, the lower the price per transaction. If you're interested in learning more, the best thing to do is to reach out to your NetSuite rep and set up a conversation where they can give you a more accurate price.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much for your time and your attention and putting up with both Steve and I. Greatly appreciate it. And Das, I don't know if there's anything else that we need to do from a follow-up perspective on your side, but I'll turn it back over to you to kind of close things out.
Thank you, Jay and Steve.